First off, just kind of the big question of what is open data? I'm going to be one of those annoying presenters. Anybody have an idea or want to give me an answer on what is open data? Anything that comes to the top of your mind?
Publicly available.
Publicly available. Anything over here? You're pretending I'm not looking at you. So we know it's publicly available, that's one thing. Crowdsourcing. Some of this data can definitely be crowdsourced. Anything else? Easy to explore. So great, we're putting some tools in front of it.
Sharing data.
Sharing. Yeah, we want to get it out there. There's a greater purpose behind this, right? If we put that content out there, somebody's going to do something with it. And that's been a fun part of my job, is trying to figure out who's that somebody and what are they actually going to do with it. Yeah.
Machine readable?
Machine readable, absolutely. So we generate these machine readable formats, meaning we can open up on a computer. We also choose open formats. So we don't need any specific software, proprietary software, in order to open up these different formats. That's good. How many people currently have an FTP site right now? And you say, hey, here's all our data downloads. Okay. How many people already have an existing open data site up? Put your hand down, or keep your hand up if it's not using my product. Okay, you're going to get a talking to. There's one over here. I saw you hide when I asked. No, yeah, definitely. So when we have these data download sites, such as exporting a lot of files out here, making it available through an FTP, that's sort of a form of open data. We've been doing this a long time. We've been sharing out GIS data, whether it's been burning DVDs and selling them for $2 just to recoup costs, putting it on an FTP. So at Esri, what we started to do is we realized a lot of this is really connected to our source data. So how can we automate this? How can we make your job easier? And then how can we start to solve that problem of who's going to use the data? So one of the big drivers behind open data is government initiatives. So just so happens on December 8th, 2009, there was this open government directive. So this came directly out of the White House. It was basically a call saying, hey, we have all this great content out there in government. Let's go ahead and make it available so that way people can use it. There's opportunity behind this. So we see economic development, startups could work with it, a sense of, this is my favorite, is transparency. So while that was the intent of all these wonderful things in 2009, I think the way that open data actually got started was almost misfortunate. Yeah, okay, we've been doing it a long time. We've been generating FTP files, but there's been this other side where, open data is all about transparency, right? We need to go in and actually, you need to put your budget data out there. We need to see how you're spending money. And so when we go out in the industry, we start looking around different sites, you start to notice, oh, hey, we have a website up that has charts that we can drill through. We did open data. Not so much. What you did is you actually checked a box. So that mayor or whoever could say, hey, we're doing open data, we're transparent, we want to really communicate with the media, why don't you go ahead and get off our back? That's not really the way it was intended, right? Because we know that open data is actually way bigger than transparency. So with open data, we put all this content out there, we can start to generate a community. So like I said in the strategy sessions, we're going to have a gentleman coming in from the Department of Homeland Security. They released 250-ish, give or take 20, data sets that were previously required some sort of security clearance out in the open. And when we asked him about it, it's like, how's that going? He's like, our community is going crazy. All these people are using the data and doing things that we didn't even imagine. And we have users we didn't even realize wanted this data. And they're getting so excited about that. And what is the goal of releasing this data out into the community? So we can start to glean knowledge from it. And together, we all start to work together to try to build a stronger society, right? And we start to get into who's using this data, what are they going to do with it? I also like to take a look at evolution about how we how we volunteer our time. So in the past, it's always been, oh, hey, help out your community, go volunteer in a park. Okay, great. So we do events, clean up parks. People got sophisticated. They started organizing Habitat for Humanity. We got together and we started building homes. That's really powerful. As a group, we got together and gave people houses and a sense of their own piece of land and a home that they could call their own. And now we're kind of evolving this into this next step. So we have this data out there in these machine readable formats. Now people are getting together And we all have our computers, we're downloading this data, we're trying to get some insight, we're trying to do something. We're doing the same thing as those people were doing holding a rake, right? We're trying to improve our community. We're trying to do something interesting and something for the greater good. So, did mention this one a little bit, but with ArcGIS, we've been sharing out and generating open data for a long time. I remember back in college, it was actually kind of hard to get data. You were like, oh, cool, I got command line arc info. This is going to be awesome. And then you didn't have any data to work against. And then you ended up doing command line to write parcels. I think that was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But data started becoming more available, right? There was even coverages on FTP sites. We could start getting into shape files. And how many people remember the geography network? Yeah, anybody else? That thing was crazy. It was based on ArcIMS. But it's the same thing we're doing now. It was all about connecting to web services so you can just get to the data and you don't have to worry about downloading and disconnecting from the source. And then, geography network kind of faded away. The technology did. But the idea and the thought behind that stayed. And we brought that back to life and we're continuing to push that forward. We share data up to the community maps program, so we see people do that sometimes. I'm going to go ahead and kind of form my data to go ahead and match some of these great base maps at Esri and then send it back to Esri. We include that in the map. Hey, that's cool. That's one way of kind of participating and doing open data. And then what we really launched 2 years ago is ArcGIS Open Data. So there's a lot of us that work really, really hard on this product, and I don't want to cheapen it. But what we really did is we built a web interface to the APIs that you already publish and share out there, so that way anybody can go in and explore the data. So somebody was talking about kind of filtering and discovery. And then the other thing that we did is we developed an ETL engine in the background. So this thing brings up all your data, and then we generate all the downloads for you automatically. So now you don't have to run these nightly batch processes to go ahead and make sure the shape files are up to date. No, you have ArcGIS server, it's connected to that core data. Great, and we just keep those downloads running. And we could regenerate those every 24 hours if your data is changing rapidly, or if it's rather static, like contours. Okay, great, once we build up that cache, maybe we just go ahead and disable that. And then we just always have those files available for download. So I think the other thing I pointed out is why. Why do we do open data? Okay, great, we want a community, hooray. I was on a call with somebody a couple weeks ago, and there was this proposal, and they're like, oh, we want open data, and we have all these ideas and all these requests that we want. It has to have all these bells and whistles. I'm that's really cool. What are you trying to accomplish with your open data program? And they stopped, thought for a second, then very confidently answered, we just want to do better open data. I was like, all right, well, that's good, right? Pat on the back. It's, we're trying to share content. We should never put anybody down for that. We should be excited. It's good they're putting it out there. But one of the things that they were really lacking was any sort of focus. Because if you just do something aimlessly, you're often going to end up like, well, how did I get here and where did I go? And there's kind of no value in what I have now because I didn't really have any kind of focus or a drive for what I wanted. So we think about some of the different ways that we can try to put some focus to this. It could actually start with, I want to replace my FTP site. All right, cool. We'll show you how to do that. We can connect in the web services and we'll generate those ETLs, and then you can recommend your customers to that. We can also provide focus in another way. So maybe we have core data that we want to share out. Hey, Andrew, my focus is that I don't get a phone call anymore asking for building footprints. Okay, great. Let's solve that problem. Let's share out that building footprint data. But one of the things that we saw in the plenary session yesterday, which was really powerful, was actually trying to tackle and work towards an initiative. So in Los Angeles, we did this GeoHub. It's kind of the general all the things. And then they did a second site. And on that second site, they focused on a particular topic, which was Vision Zero. And with Vision Zero, they said, great, we want to try to limit or absolutely eliminate pedestrians getting hit in the streets. Noble goal. So they put up the page, they put up some apps in front of it, and as a citizen, I could go to this, I see the page, I'm informed, I can get to some of these different applications, oh, and then I can go download the data too if I want. So it's always there for me to go ahead and do more. And one of the things I really, really like about that approach is because if we go back and we actually think about this slide right here, it's really awesome if we have a community of civic hackers that gets together and brings down the data in this digital format and does great stuff with it. To me, this is kind of like the 1%ers. And the 99%ers, which are all of my other neighbors who don't really understand technical things. I'm the nerd, right? I'm the software guy, so they're like, oh, you know computers. My one neighbor next door owns a pizza place. Doesn't really care about computers, but he does care about what's happening in our community, especially when he wants to go ahead and lobby to our school board about why we need a new school bus stop. I'm like, oh, there's layers that you could probably put together. What if that information was usable in a way that he could just go ahead and do that, right? So what LA was trying to do in their efforts with Vision Zero is we introduced the whole topic with a page, but then we created apps that just the general citizen, the 99%ers can go ahead and use to interact with the data. And then the 1%ers that want to go ahead and download and do things, awesome. We automatically generate that for them as well. So this brings us into, how do we make this magic happen? Hopefully I've sold you on Open Data. You love it. You're really excited to go turn it on. You want to replace your FTP site with this. You want to start focusing on initiatives. And the way that we actually start to do this is just registering a lot of core content in ArcGIS Online. So if we have ArcGIS Server running on-prem, we can go ahead and register a layer. Now, how many people have Server? Everybody. It's like a really popular product now. So when we publish a map service and we register it with ArcGIS Online, a lot of times we do it at /map server, right? Then we share it up there and you add it to the map. And if you've put 2 layers in that service, or you've put 200, somebody adds it and they get all 200, right? So it's almost like a group of layers when we register something as /map server. Well, when we look at things from Open Data, we want to change this a little bit, and we actually want to register the individual layers within the service. So maybe we do map server /0, which ends up being that top layer, right? That's some sort of point. Maybe that's trees. Okay, great. I'll take map server /0. We register that. And the reason we want to do that is because we have more fine-grained control over the metadata, over the searchability of it, when we go ahead and share it out as open data. And we do have some scripts that are out there. If anybody really wants to know where they are, come up, drop me a card, and I can send you a link. That will take your web service or your ArcGIS Server map service and create an item for each individual layer. And then it's nice. It automatically does that for you. Python. So we have server. We also mentioned cloud storage. So great, I can publish up to ArcGIS Online. That's what I'm going to demo today because I don't have server running locally or elsewhere. And we also even have a way that we can bring in data through external APIs. So that's kind of a little bit more of an advanced topic. But what are the interesting things? So within ArcGIS Open Data, I mentioned that we built this download engine. Well, this download engine that we created is an open source server we put out there. We call it Coop. Coop has a lot of different connectors. And why this ends up being an important thing is as a community, I might buy, or we already have some sort of cloud-based 311 system. Great, I offloaded all that stuff. We just pay for the solution, we have 311. Well, that's really important data to go ahead and make available as open data. So how do we get that stuff in here? Well, we can actually do this custom connector to bring that 311 data over. So if you are in that case, let me know. We can kind of talk through more of that advanced piece. But today we're going to stick more with just publishing right into online. And then again, we're going to organize our content. So I want to make these items look good, have a good thumbnail, description, and text. We'll organize it into groups. And we'll see as we go into the demonstration, do I want one group that has everything, or do I want to do focused groups for each topic of information that I'm sharing out there? And then last but not least, I get to create my open data site. So I'll show you how to go ahead and create a site. We actually have released last Thursday. We put out a new update that has this new beta site editor. So we'll get to take a look at that and ask some questions. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and hop into the demonstration and just start to get into the nuts and bolts about how this is all put together and working. Before we go into the demo, though, I am going to open it up. Does anybody have questions on what we said so far?
I have a question about, you talked about registering the individual layers, but would you also want to do the map service too if somebody wanted to bring it in as a group?
That's an excellent question. So what she asked was, wouldn't you want to be able to share the whole map service over? Because somebody might want to add the group of layers or discover that group of layers. Actually, what we do in Open Data is if you share out /map server, when you bring it over, we will roll through that service and we create what we call individual data sets, which will be each individual layer. So we never expose that whole how to add just a group. Ironically enough, though, somebody the first time in 2 years did ask this same question. We had a long dialogue about it last Wednesday. So this is the second time. This means maybe we're starting to trend and we need to be able to find, how do we add group layers or address group layers? So, good question. Any others? Oh, I saw half a hand. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and we'll get right into the demo and just going to walk through everything from start to finish. So I'm just going to go ahead. Here I am at ArcGIS Online. So I can go ahead and sign in. Excellent. I have my own organization, so andrew.maps@arcgis.com, cleverly named Andrew Stauffer org name. And for my organization, I'm an administrator, so I can go in and say, all right, I want to go ahead and edit settings. So to edit settings, I can scroll down, and there's a tab down here called Open Data. Now, if I had it disabled, this button would be green and tell me to enable it. So I need to turn it on at the org level first. This is step one. Once I've turned this on, I want to go ahead and create an open data group. So we do have a process that would actually do it for me automatically. I've already done that once or twice. So we can kind of go back and we'll actually walk through adding somebody to it or creating a new group. The other thing that we can do, so if I have this existing group in here, we put in some shortcuts for you. Oh, I want to add some people that can go ahead and search open data or create open data. So I'll add Courtney, and she can be in that education group. Next, assign. Cool. So now when Courtney logs in, she now has the ability to go ahead and share open data with the world through my site. So easy way to go ahead and kind of expedite that creation and sharing process. Now I mentioned some of these groups are created for me, so I'm going to go create a brand new one. So I go in here and say create a group. Okay, we'll call this one crime data. Halifax crime data. And now I go down here and I see that there's these different functions of a group. So I can see it's private, org only, or public. It has to be public for open data. So that was one of the first things we identified, right? Publicly accessible. The next thing that we see is there's this checkbox right here, designate available for use in open data sites. So I'll go ahead and check that. Actually, I'm going to update the name too. Instead of crime data, I'll call it Andrew's crime data, and I'll show you why here in just a minute. So excellent. And then who can contribute open data? Members. Can people apply to join this group? Probably not. I want to assign them. So I'll go ahead and save. Of course, I need tags. It's like it knew what I was going to type. All right. So we'll hit save. Great. It created my group. Now it's just looking for some content to put in here. So in order to get some content in here, I'm going to go to My Content. We'll create a new folder. Called Andrew's Open Data. I'll go in here. I'm going to go ahead and add an item. I'll do it from my computer. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and choose a file. And I have some crime data. So I'll choose to go ahead and upload that. Okay, And then I see this option here. It's actually going to go ahead and publish it as a hosted layer for me. So we'll have this service in online to work again. So go ahead and say add item. And then it's going to take this file as it uploads it. You may already know this story. It sends it off to the online servers. The online servers unpack that. We create a database, and we go ahead and load that data into it. So we see all this starting to come to light here. And it shouldn't take too long. And while it's going, I start to see what is some of the first levels of metadata that I can use to start to describe my open data. So we want to go ahead and change this description. So I can hit edit. Now I can keep going and put more and more information in here. We actually see some really good descriptive text blocks. And think about it, this is really your opportunity when the public does a search for crime. What do you want to tell them about it? This is going to be the blurb that they read before they go ahead and click download. So this is going to be an introduction. We probably do want to spend some time actually putting some more information other than crime data from the city of Halifax. For the sake of demo purposes, I'm probably going to stop there. An interesting thing to point out, though, is I can go ahead and use hyperlinks, too. So maybe I want to say this is crime data for the city of Halifax. Click here to website. Cool. So do a search, there we go, great. Copy that guy. All right, great, now we're set. I can go ahead and update this thumbnail as well. We've seen a lot of strategies over the last 6 years about how to create really nice looking thumbnails in ArcGIS Online. Does anybody have a tip that they want to share with the group? I'll walk away. The mic did not like that question. Yes?
If you save as PNG, you're likely to get like a bigger picture, smaller size.
Yeah, so if I create a new thumbnail, maybe I want to go ahead and create it as a PNG. It's lighter, so it's not as much transporting over the web. I've seen some people do some really cool things where they actually use PowerPoint. They render up what they want it to look like, city graphics, whatever. It kind of has a theme to it. And then PowerPoint has like an export to thumbnail option or create thumbnail option. So people will do that sometimes. And hey, it's kind of odd, but my graphic design days are behind me. And I now use PowerPoint. So almost everybody has access to it. It's an easy way to do it. So just another idea there. So great, I can see that I have all of these other different options. Access and use constraints. So this is a big one. And I'm getting a little excited there. So who knows what access and use constraints really means or why this is important? Does anybody want to take a guess? Huh? Scale? A little bit. There's some information on how to use the data, but there's no wrong answers here this week.
So people don't use the data for the wrong things.
Excellent. So people will use the data for the wrong things. Maybe we want to go ahead and limit this and say, you know what? I'm going to share this data out there, but you can't go ahead and redistribute it and make money off of it because you're taking our sort of government infrastructure and then going for profit. Okay, yeah, that's definitely one angle. And then the other angle, just exploring the opposite, is we can say, I want to go ahead and actually apply a license to this that tells people everybody can use it. And hey, commercial companies, suck it up. Take it. All of it. Because if I put my street data in there, my street center lines, I put in my parcels, I put in my police stations, my schools, you know what happens? All these companies that want to start using open data say, we're going to bring that in. Awesome. Those streets that you just digitized show up in that brand new application or that popular application everybody's using. Awesome. When you draw a new street or you add, update some parcels and you hit save, the action, that click, really just starts to magnify. And then these waves just have this ripple effect. And all of these other commercial systems out there could actually be updated. So what if every other application out there that represented your community actually used your data? That means you have a lot of power now, doesn't it? you have a lot of control with what you're building here in ArcGIS. So one thing that we'd recommend is we can go into Creative Commons license picker. So I like this one, so we can say choose a license. Cool. So I can go ahead in here, I can pick a license. Let me see. Okay, use latest. Is this in a different language? That's fun. Google, you let me down. Hey, there we go. So, do I want to allow adaptations of this work? Yeah, if you take it, you can go do something with it. Or if I do want to be protective of it, no, you can't. You have to use the data as is. Well, I want people to use it. The more people that use the data, the more power and responsibility that I have when I'm creating and sharing this data. Do I want to allow commercial uses of this work? If I want to share my data into these commercial applications so my citizens always have the most up-to-date content when they're using their popular apps, yeah, absolutely I do. So that's up to me. Cool, here's the Creative Commons license. Ah, here's this beautiful thing down here. Have a web page. You bet I do. So I'll go ahead and copy that. Now when I go into this access and use constraints section in the item details page, there's this button where I can actually just hit to view HTML and source. I paste that in there and hit save. Ha, check that out. Actually put the license right on this details page. So if somebody was to come by and discover it, this work is actually CC 04.0. We can click on this and actually learn, can I reuse this? Yes, I can as a commercial vendor, as a student, or whoever I am. So if you leave here with no other information about open data, at least it was make sure to apply a license and think about how you want that data to be reused. Any thoughts or questions about that kind of idea on licensing?
I thought the whole idea of open data was that it wasn't licensed. Like, is it still open data if you don't have a bunch of restrictions on it?
That's why you saw me choose the Creative Commons 4.0 license, where I didn't want any of those restrictions. So I said I want to allow adaptations. I want to allow commercial use. Yeah, there are cases where people say, hey, we're still going to put this out there, but you can't use it for commercial use. Okay, great. You're basically building a pipeline to academia, or to your residents. Great, residents, make your own maps. Nobody uses Google Maps anyways. Use your own. Awesome. So I built this item details page in here. Oh, I look beautiful. And now we'll go ahead and share. So one of the first things that we've identified is it has to be publicly accessible data. So we're going to do public. And then I'm going to go ahead and choose that open data group. So I mentioned I'm going to go ahead and put it in the crime group. And hit OK. Now before we go over to the open data side and actually start building out the site, there's one other thing I want to talk to you about. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share out another form of open data. So this is going to be also from my computer. I'm going to choose a file. And in this case, we're going to choose a CSV file. So I'm going to select that and hit open. The analyzer's taking a look at it, trying to figure out what it can do with it. And then it's going to prompt me from this screen. Okay, Andrew, what do you have this city, employee, salaries, what do you want to do? So, Chipotle's a favorite of mine. It's like after lunch, right? I didn't eat. So then, okay, I have an option here. Do I want to publish this as a hosted layer and online? This is a pretty small CSV. I don't necessarily have to do that. Do I want to map that? Well, this gets into an interesting debate. Because in this room and at this conference, we believe pretty much all data can be spatially enabled, right? But employee salary information is one of those ones where it's like, we're probably not going to show where all the city employees live and how much money they make. It just feels weird. We're probably not going to point out and map which office they work in either. So we probably want to make a conscious decision that we're not going to have a location to this. This is going to be purely tabular data. So I can say that I just want to go ahead and create this as a table service in ArcGIS Online. And if I go ahead and hit add item, it'll upload it and publish it as a hosted feature service in ArcGIS Online that actually has no geometry. Just a table. Now I mentioned this is a small data set. So this is under 5 megabytes. I'm actually going to opt to not publish it. And I'm going to still upload it to my account. Okay. And then if we want to go into access and use constraints, because I think it's still on my clipboard. All right. Okay, put in my good intro descriptor there, hit save. And then I'm also going to go ahead and share this. And this time we're going to put it in Andrew's Open Data demo group and hit OK. So excellent. I've enabled it on the organization. I've enabled it in a group. I published a file, a shape file as a feature service. We uploaded a CSV. We learned about licensing. Hooray. Now we're going to go ahead and go over to Open Data. So I can go from my organization all the way back here to this tab. And I can see I have these different groups. I can click on this Manage Sites button. And this will go ahead and open up the Open Data Admin console. There's also another way to get to this, by the way. If I go to just opendata.arcgis.com, I can log in, go down and click Manage Sites, and that will also take me there. So sometimes people are like, wait, where's the Open Data Admin again? We're like, just go to opendata.arcgis.com, log in, go down to Manage Sites. That'll take you where you need to go. So I don't need 2 of these open. Great. Now the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and create a new site. So I'm going to launch this one. We will call this data. Call this fed data style. So you can see I get a specific URL here. And it actually is going to be feddatastyle.andrew.opendata.arcgis.com. It's a lot of subdomains in there. If I want to do something custom, like data.mycity.gov, I can do that. We have in the documentation directions on how to go ahead and use a CNAME to point a subdomain over to your open data site. So cool, you don't have to live with this gnarly triple subdomain URL anymore. It can just be purely data.charlotte.gov, right? We offer an option in here to go ahead and add Google Analytics. Does anybody work with Google Analytics? Awesome. I like to see that. It is probably the most powerful analytic and web tracking system out there. We've talked about building our own. We're going to stick with maps. Google can stick with the rest of the internet. So we'll use theirs. I can put in a custom browser icon, which is this little globe up here. Maybe it's something specific to my city. And then maybe I want to go ahead and give it a name. So again, call this one Fed Data Style. Now I can make the site public or private. By default, it starts out as private. What this means is if somebody tries to go ahead and preview it, they'll get challenged, they'll have to log into it. Remember, I already shared my data out as public though. So that data's out there. It just means I don't have a site in front of it yet. I can go ahead and set the extent of my map. So if I want to focus on a particular area, maybe we'll go back, and since I have data from Halifax and Charlotte, I'm going to do an odd shape there. And I stick with the default base maps or use a custom. So I'll go ahead and hit next. Now I can go ahead and add data from different groups. So this is looking in my organization, and we created Andrew's crime data, so of course we want to add that one. Andrew's Open Data demo, so great, we can put that in here. But one of the really cool things and extremely powerful features that we have in here is I can uncheck this box and I can add open data groups from anybody who's created a group and shared it out and has also enabled that open data capability. So one of the ones I like to look at, This is all of that Homeland Security data that's really rich. So if I want to go ahead and add in something that seems very relevant in here, we talked about crime and maybe emergency services and commercial data. Great. I just federated my open data site with the Department of Homeland Security. That was cool. If I'm a city, I can easily add in data from the county. If I'm a state, I can bring in multiple counties, multiple cities. If I'm a regional council of governments, I can add in 27, 30, 200 different government groups in here. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out, this is why the name is also important. So I know that this is coming from Highfeld Open, and particularly this is the chemicals data sets. Awesome. Believe it or not, we have a lot of people that really just like to use the name Open Data. Not so awesome if I want to federate with them. I got to try to figure out who this is. So if I click on it, it actually tells me it's a collection of GIS data. It's like we're getting more general by the minute. So we can view this in ArcGIS.com. Hey, check that out. I see just from the URL, public info is Tampa GIS. Okay, I'll probably start to get some more clues in this if I started and let that finish loading, but we won't do that today. Awesome, so I picked my groups, and the next thing I do is hit next, and it's going to bring me into the site editor. So from the site editor, I can go in, I can put in a new name, image logo. We have these different widgets that we can put in here and configure. We were extremely proud of this work 2 years ago. Our team worked very, 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 very hard on this. But we're also really good at working with our customers and listening to your feedback. So we started to identify a lot of patterns about what people were doing when they were building their open data home pages. And they did some really cool stuff. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and still use this existing site editor. And what we've seen people do more commonly is they go ahead and hit this code tab. And when they hit this code tab, they can enter in their own custom HTML and CSS, which uses Bootstrap, the most modern or most common HTML CSS framework on the web. So a lot of times we end up talking to a GIS department, and they're like, oh, I'm not a Bootstrap guy. Like, we'll ask the city developer who maintains our main website. He's like, oh yeah, no, like all of our websites are using Bootstrap. I can do that really easy. So we've seen some really good looking sites come up fast. So you can see I have an example here of some code, and we're just going to go ahead and drop all of this stuff in here. So this is just all the styling. And you can tell by the number of lines this is going to be special. Oh, we're getting there. Whew. Okay, copy. Site setup. Remember we said that was going to be in the CSS section. All right, now we're into the HTML section. So here's my header. Copy. I thank you. Stay. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and replace that. And then in the body section, I'll also put in some code. A very nice designer has labeled this for me. Okay, let's copy that. Oops, and the last one is the footer. I like to show off my development skills in front of an audience. All right, so paste. And go ahead and hit save. Great, my updates were saved. By the way, since I went into this whole custom thing, I can't go back and say, nope, never mind, I want to go do widgets. I need to delete the site and create a new one. Not too bad. Now let's go ahead and preview the site. Oh, that's gorgeous. So we see this big, huge kind of hero image at the top. There's a logo. It has a title in here. Scroll down, here's that map. Feels really odd to say this working in Esri. I like the pages without the map on it. It just looks a little cleaner. I can go ahead and search for data in here. I see departments and agencies that I'm working with. This is really great. Keywords and common tags. So if I clicked on one of these, it goes ahead and does a query. So this would be a query on landscape, a query on forestry. And excellent. And here's this nice little footer at the bottom. Really cool. And I know what you're saying. You cheated. I did. Designer gave me all that HTML, CSS. I put it in there. I'll show you our new sites here in just a second. So from my site, I now go ahead and do a search for all the data. Okay, American Red Cross headquarters. This is coming from Department of Homeland Security. I see from my search results, kind of the bounding box of where things live. So Red Cross, good. Halifax crimes, that's that data that I shared out. Remember I mentioned that description was important? So I kept it short because we were sitting here, but look, gorgeous job from Highfeld in here of how they're introducing and talking about American Red Cross chapter regions, right? So if I click on Halifax, great, it's going to go ahead and load for me. I can go ahead and open up this table so I can start to explore this data. If we're going to go ahead and filter on a date, location, so these different IDs, and here I can actually filter by the histogram. It's changing and updating the map as I change the histogram, so hooray. And then if I want to do just some quick simple charting of the data, I can do that here as well. So if we want to do it based on location, a lot of things happen at the great place of other, or dangerous place of other. So cool chart, we see how this is interacting with the map, giving me just kind of some light views of how to start interacting with the data as a citizen. This does open up in ArcGIS Online if I wanted. I can share this map. So maybe before I share that map, I want to go ahead and apply some smart styling to it. Oops, I'm going to go ahead and remove. Let's try again. Oh, that guy's not coming in. So I can go ahead and share. I can copy and paste the URL so I can send it over to my friend Steve over here. He can open it up. He sees the same thing. I can embed just the web map or the map that we see here inside my police website showing their police data. Going back to the charts, awesome. Maybe I want to go in here. I want to change that to this lighter blue, or let's go green. Cool, done there. And I can do the same thing and take the code to embed that chart. So then my police department can say, here's the location of the crimes. Here's the two different ways that we've charted it out. We've embedded it in their own page. So really cool that we can embed these different components elsewhere. Then mention that we do these auto downloads. So here is spreadsheet, KML, and shapefile. So these open machine readable formats. If I had a filter applied, it would ask me if I want the full data set or the filter. And then for APIs, so I can get in and we can get to the GeoJSON, or traditionally what we know as ArcGIS Server REST directory, right? The GeoServices. So I'm going to go back here to my content. We're going to do one thing and then we'll kick into looking at the new sites. All right, so I'm going to go to settings. And this is a preview of something really cool. So I'm going to enable export data on my item and online. Go ahead and hit save. And we'll go back to open data. So great. Now I want to manage sites again. And I mentioned that we created these new beta sites. So we listened to, followed, and observed what our customers were doing. You saw how we created that beautiful Fed site by pasting in all that code. Well, now what I can do is I can go ahead and try a beta site. So we anticipate this being in beta for a few months. Maybe we'll pull it out in about winter's time or so. Could be even a little sooner. We're just letting you know it's under construction. As I come in here, very similar prompts. What do I want to call this? Data beta. Same things. Okay, we'll go next. Available groups, Andrew's crime data. Andrew's data demo. This time I'm not going to add in groups outside my organization. Hit next. Awesome. This just dropped me into our new layout builder. This new layout builder comes with one template right now. we want to work to go ahead and add some options so you can choose which layout and templates that you want to start working with. If we scroll down, we see again that big hero image at the top, some text, my search box to find data. Hey, here's all these categories. Do I want to link out to any apps? Kind of teach people what they can do here. Really, really good looking site out of the box. If you do absolutely nothing, this is what you get. But if we want to go ahead and go in and customize this, I can click on this box right here. Cool. Dynamically start changing some of that text. If I want to change the background image, I can do that. If I want to change the height of this, so maybe let's go to like 250. Oh, I saw it move down a little bit. So if we hide that guy and go back here, there's actually an image in the background. So this is actually using a whole row. I can go ahead and configure this row. So that's actually hosting this background city image right now. I can put in any image that I want. Or I can say, you know, I don't really want to do an image. Maybe I kind of want to go toward that gray color for now. Cool. Get back to the site editor. I'm going to go down here. And we provided some of these categories for you. And these can, you know, everybody wants to have their own identity and their own sense of styling. So one of the things that we allow you to do is interactively pick and choose these colors. So if I go and configure one of these category cards, again, here's my color picker. So I can kind of surf through these colors, or if I know the exact hex code of what that color is, I can just take that and paste it in here. Now this becomes really important from a branding perspective. How many people have, how many of your organizations have some sort of branding guidelines? They don't let you just choose whatever colors you want and just say, here it is, right? It's like, no, it has to be this certain shade of green. I'm like, okay, sure. So you can pick that specific shade. And we can do that for all these little icons. We can also do this for the site itself. We have this theme builder in here. So again, if I want to change the header, do that, apply colors, or apply changes. Awesome, the header updated. I can change the background of the page. So if I didn't want white, I want it to be a different shade. I can do some really, really cool stuff in here. Change the link color, the text, and so on. Now, the next interesting part that we have here is I've set that style. I know that I have all these rows and these configurable things. Now I want to start adding in some of my own. Well, the base of this always starts with a row. So I can take in a row, bring it over here, and I see an option. Do I want to add it above or below? So this time I'll say above. And there's my empty row. I can go ahead and say I want that background color to be kind of that deep blue again. If we go back to the site editor, now that I have a row in there, I can start to put in these different cards. So one card I might want to put in is an image card. Maybe we want to go ahead and put in a text card. And I have these little anchors that show me where is this going to go. If I want to put it on the left side, put it over here, it splits that page in half. If I were to go ahead and add another one, so maybe we want, not banner, we want image. I'll do it on this side. Cool. Kind of auto-size that a little bit. Oh, images aren't the exact size. So I can start to use my different tools in here and change the size of that. Maybe I want to make that section just a little smaller. Okay, cool. Now I almost got a point to where that text is the right size and those images are identical. And then if I want to go in and configure it, again, hit the gear, URL to the image, what is my alt text? So we just made this a lot easier to build out a really good looking site. And some of the inspiration that we used and gave to our developer was, how can we create that LA GeoHub site without a web designer? I think he did a really, really good job. And our team did fantastic work putting this together. So we'll finish this up. Okay. Save, view saved site. All right, so here we see data beta. It's going to go ahead and load up my custom site. I scroll through here. This looks really aside from these missing images. It looks really professional. And I did this all on my own without any code. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and do another search for data. So we had Halifax crimes. Remember that CSV file that we uploaded? We kept it as a file, right? We didn't actually publish that, but check it out. I can still go in here and explore the data. We can go ahead and filter this annual rate. So let's go from to 150,000. Great. Awesome. We're actually filtering and working interactively against that CSV. Overview is all the same. So again, we still see our information in here. We're highlighting that license. Hey, somebody wants to come use my data. They get immediate visual feedback. Oh, that's the Creative Commons license. I know that this is free and accessible, so I'm going to go ahead and go for it. And then we have some ideas down here of some related data sets for this. And I will go back. We'll take another look at our crime data and some more cool things that we can do with the crime data. You'll notice the site looks a little different now because this is using a brand new code base. So I can see more attributes. We can get into the crime data. And one of the things that our team worked on and added in here was the API Explorer. So now when a developer in my community comes and wants to work with my data, they have this experience where the documentation is in line and they can start to work with it or work with my data. So no active filters. Maybe I want to say select an attribute. Location is like my favorite place. I can choose which fields I want to output. FID, object ID, don't mean a whole lot to me. Maybe that Rucker extent _D, great. Spatial inputs, am I spatial filtering this, yes or no? It has, again, inline documentation explaining this to me. Because I find this hard to believe, but there's some developers out there that don't use our technology. So what this does is it becomes a very friendly way to introduce them to start using your data APIs and how you're sharing it out. And then last but not least, we see output options. So do you want all these values? Is it account only? Really cool. We hit try it out. Excellent. There's the actual JSON response. Developer can copy that, go do something with it. But the other thing we did is we actually built that query for them. So then they can just take that query and put it into their application. So we're really excited to go ahead and get this API Explorer out there. We also added on these new sites here, it's because I didn't make it public. Admin. Okay, we'll view this guy again. If I shared this out public, we would see, and I wasn't logged in, the public can click right here, and we actually offer a login option. They can log in with Google Plus or Facebook, and they've logged into your open data site. And now that they've logged into your open data site, what we did in the back end is we created an ArcGIS account for them, but they might not be wise and understand how to use ArcGIS.com. That's fine. They go in here, they get to their crime data, they did something meaningful with the filters, and they can opt to go ahead and favorite this data set. So if they favorite this, it sort of gives them a bookmark. They can always come back to it. Other than favoriting it, they can also launch to go create a story map. So now we're giving some of these simple tools out to the citizens, looks like I got stuck there, to go ahead and actually tell a story with your data. You know, we're trying to get beyond those 1%ers that can actually do something with your content. We're using all of these other tools that we have within ArcGIS so that way they can start to tell their stories. And then last but not least, since I enabled in ArcGIS Online that ability to export data for all, we recently just added support for file geodatabase. So this is now here, we can click, and the data is downloaded in file geodatabase. Now we did have a little bit of debate on this because it's like, well, is that really an open format because it's not like a just CSV or KML? And we do have this is why we added it in the additional downloads or additional resources section. There is an open API that you can download and actually work against the file geodatabase if you wanted to program. QGIS has a support for file geodatabase. Obviously, we support it, so we feel like that's pretty open. But this met the need of large data sets, so where states have aggregated all their parcels, we have column widths greater than 10 lengths, or 10 characters, because that's a limitation of the shapefile. So excellent, hooray file geodatabase, it's there. And again, that's only for hosted services. Cool. And then there's my APIs again. All right, so we'll start to wrap up here. Nice long demo session, right? So cool. So where are we getting with open data is you already do it. You have ArcGIS server, you have items registered in ArcGIS Online. We can share them into open data. We know this workflow now. And you've already had a precedence for this. There's so many of you that raised your hand when we said, do you have an FTP site? Okay, cool, let's make it easier. Let's connect it to your source data. You already have a solution. So you saw how you can go back to your office and actually build a site just like this. It's kind of amazing. And guess what? There's no limit on the number of sites that you create. You can create your general LA GeoHub, then you can go create your Vision Zero one too. And you can build one for every single mayoral initiative that you have, or build one for specific departments. You can build one for police, you can build one for planning, you can build one for core GIS. Really cool. I do like to give a warning when we think about working with open data though, is if we're sharing out some of this information, we are sharing it to the public. That means somebody's going to get it, they can download it and go do things with it. There's people out there that just get really bent out of shape over policy. It's like, oh, we have to like over policy analyze everything. Let's kind of just use some general common sense. It's like, I'll say is, open data is like crossing the street. Pretty easy, look both ways, but yet people get hit all the time. So we've seen cases, people accidentally share out data. It's like, oh, that had PII information, personal identifiable information. Oops. Maybe we should check that out before we shared it out there. Let's kind of scrub our data beforehand. There's a chance that you already have a ton of data that you can already put in here. And then as you start to get more aggressive and want to release your salary information, excellent, work with HR on how we do an export as a CSV, and let's strip out everybody's home address and social security numbers and things like that. So use some common sense. I think everybody in this room can do that. And I think you'll find that very quickly you'll start to master the art of open data. So you'll understand how all this works together, and it's going to be really interesting because what we have seen over the last 2 years is we've had some very aggressive and happy GIS departments. We're like, we're going to jump all into this. We like the latest things from Esri, and we're like, hey, we like that too, come on. And they started building out these open data sites. And then when they went back and they were like kind of mastering this thing, then they started looking at, like, wow, if we had a different open data solution out there, like, do you know how much people charge to host a database and some downloads? It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was a county that we looked at in Northern California. It was paying $17,000 a month. Like $190,000 a year to go ahead and generate file downloads. Crazy, right? So if you hook this up to your services, we generate the downloads for you. Wow, awesome. We can go back to the IT manager, CIO, mayor. Look, we've implemented an open data site. We have this in here. Here's downloads, by the way. I saved the organization 150 to 190 grand. You're welcome. And from that, they start to look at it and like, wow, you kind of have some potential here. You're doing some things. You're starting to, in GIS, you're already working in a lot of different departments, right? You're working with planning, you're in police, you're all over the place. You're a core function of the city. Well, that's also a core function of the chief data officer. We heard from one yesterday. That was Lillian, right? She had some really cool ideas and strategies behind how we're going to take city data and put it to good use. Well, check that out. So you go home, you enable open data, we share these things out. I saved my city or county tons of money, and I'm working across all these different departments. Oh, wow. I've been a GIS manager for 5 years. I think I now found my new role. And no joke, in the first 2 weeks of January this year, I got an email from 2 different customers. I love this. And they said, hey, I've been a GIS manager for a while. I've been managing all this. I'm working across departments, but like since I did this open data thing, they want me to do more. I was asked to create a new title. Like, what should I be? I'm like, that's so cool. Welcome to Chief Data Officer. And I'm like, that sounds really important. I don't know if that's me. I'm like, no, it is you. You are that important. So you can naturally progress into this position. Now, just a couple quick things, just taking a look at the road ahead. So we put out our Sites 2.0 beta. We're going to keep adding some more cards in there. And then we saw how we built a home page. I'm going to pull the rug out here. It's not just a home page builder, it's a page builder. So we're going to let you create some different pages in the future here. You're going to be able to go ahead and create your own dashboards. And you're going to be able to go ahead and create your own narratives. We almost look at these as like a one-page story map. So maybe I have a map, a chart, and some text. It's kind of explaining some things about the data. This came from a need where we say, hey, we want to release data on officer-involved shootings. We're in this really cool partnership program with the White House. By the way, they're accepting applications. They love it when you send them this data. And they said, well, before we put it out there, we kind of have to put some context to it, because if we give a bunch of information about officer-involved shootings to the press, they could kind of twist that the wrong way. Like we saw what they did with snowplows. So we want to put some context into it. So great, we can do that with narratives. And not only will you be able to create all those pages, we want citizens to be able to create those pages too. Then you can start to see, what are these KPIs that my community is taking a look at? What are the stories that they're trying to tell with our data? We also have connected content. So if we've added in a web map into the open data group, we surface that at the bottom of the dataset page with the related data sets. So this kind of gets into what if somebody wants to find that group of layers? Okay, great. Well, they found, a manhole data set. Here's the whole plumbing infrastructure that we have for the city in a web map. Click and open that and go do something. We introduced the API Explorer. This was big. Support for file geodatabase. We got asked for that one for a long time, so we're very, very excited about that. And then just this big part where citizens can log in with these social media accounts. So they're creating public accounts. It doesn't count against your named user base yet, ever. And then they can start to do things. You saw that we introduced story maps. We're going to keep adding more and more functions. But the easy functions, not the hard ones, because we want to be nice to the citizens. We want them to create interesting things. Questions? Yes, up front.
When will the download for data projections be out of beta?
Excellent question. So right now, by default, we do data downloads in WGS 84. We started supporting local projections about a year ago or so, and we've kept that in beta. We've been iterating through that with a couple customers, and the question is, when is it going to be out of beta? We're making that decision. That could be something that we end up opting and end up leveraging the hosted service. So that would be a way that we support all the local projections. And then if we're connected to just server right now, we might produce that out as WGS 84. We have just some debates on that. Be happy to get some more feedback. It has been interesting in some cases where we have generated the local projection, and we do get calls if it's off an inch.
It's kind of buggy still.
Yeah. So we had somebody, since that component's open source, we actually had somebody go in and submit a PR and fix it, then bring it back in. I mean, we're working on these bugs as well. So yeah, we see, and as we know, dealing with all of these different transformations can be difficult. And then if there's a rounding error that's like way out here, past the decimal, things shift. So we're working on what is the strategy on how we can best and safely provide you local projections. So we don't have a deadline of when, but we want to do something soon. What would you think if it was for hosted only?
Well, it seems like if you upload it in one projection, it should carry through everything. You're already reprojecting it.
So if you're uploading it online, you'd be okay if we offered the different projections, but if it's coming from server, you're okay if we do WGS 84?
Or just the one that you uploaded as.
Okay,
Download it as that.
we can do that. Probably sooner than later. Yes?
When you make the custom URL for the open data set, you mentioned something about .gov. Does it do that on the fly? Does it care about what domain you use?
Yeah, so when you use a custom domain, you need to go into your registrar, and we have some instructions on how to set up the CNAME. But one of the examples we always like to point out, opendata.dc.gov. So they've set this up and pointed it. They put in the redirect and the registrar, the CNAME to go over to what was like that longer URL, and then we can get to it through, opendata.gov. We've got quite a few. So like geohub.la city. Surprise, there was an open data site. So if you have more questions, our technical staff is downstairs in the vendor area as well.
Normally I title raster data and elevations or photos as my base map. Is there a place to share raster data in Open Data?
That's a great question. So do we support raster data in Open Data? Yes, we do. If it comes as an image service, we will render the image on the map, and then you can do a download of that image, and it just does an extract based on the extent. We did not carry through yet and start to leverage the extract function of the image server. Gathering some feedback on that, it's one of those things, is if it's your image service and people are pulling, they're going to be chewing up some of your CPU. So we're trying to figure out what's a fair balance there. Question in the way back.
Can it handle either a live data feed or an automated feed? So something like crime data, that's something you're going to probably want to push on a daily basis. You don't necessarily want to be able to go in every morning and do that.
Awesome. So the question is, how does this handle live data, or can it handle a live data feed? If we share from ArcGIS server and it's connected to our source data, so I update the parcels and I have like 20 edits a day, how does my open data update? Every 24 hours, we query the data out of your server and rebuild the cache, so we do it daily. If the data is hosted in ArcGIS Online, there's a special parameter there that will detect, the data's been changed. We'll drop and rebuild. And if you keep changing that data, we keep dropping and rebuilding as much as possible. And part of the rationale behind this is when we send queries to your server to pull the data out, we don't want to knock down your server. But like our friends on the online team, we take some good shots at them. We send it was 16 simultaneous requests at a time, then we started sending, I think it's 12. So I mean, we pass a good load over to those guys, and they're scaling, they're handling it. When it's your ArcGIS server, we only do 4 because we want to be nice. We understand you have a lot of other applications as we're extracting that data. So, anybody over? Yes?
What should you do for suppressed data? I know when Open Data first came out, you kind of just didn't handle it right. So let's say you have counties in the United States and your cancer rates, and you want to not show some of them. Like, should you make it null? Should you make it -99? Or what should you do?
Interesting. So you're saying as far as particular data values, and you want to go ahead and null some of these out for a certain reason.
Right.
I think in that case, one of the things I would do is you could null it out. It could be 0, maybe depending on what your field type is. I would make sure to either put that in the description, or within ArcGIS Online, we have support for standards-based metadata. So if we go over to our item over here, overview, here's metadata. So maybe I want to go ahead and write that into the metadata editor, and it stores it in that document. When somebody goes and downloads a shapefile, we pack the metadata in it. I believe we're also doing it with File Geodatabase as well. And then if you do have standards-based metadata, when they're on your dataset page, we link to that document, so then they can go read it. So just well documented. And you also just bring up another great point. If anybody missed Courtney's session this morning, you can apologize to her. She's back here. But you did have some fans here. But no, she covered some best practices. So some of the best practices that we see out there is, how do we make sure to apply good field aliases? You've requested data before, somebody gives it to you, and you're like, what _QR? Like, what is this? And you're like, oh, that's like crime status. That was an important field. So always try to be considerate and think about that for usability. Another question over here.
For your guys' new website development application, are you guys going to be opening that up to possibly not just open data itself, but I mean intranet kind of operations as well? We probably have use for it where we have realty specialists in different departments that can utilize a nice web page, a source that they can go to
discussions around that, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way that we could start to do that. No immediate plan, so it's not like coming in 10.5 or anything like that. But at some point, we want to get there. So.
Are you going to be incorporating, I know you guys have that new application Cascade, and this kind of has very similar behavior. Are you guys possibly going to be pushing some of your guys' abilities into that application? Are you guys talking that way?
So that team actually sits with our open data team at the R&D Center in Washington, D.C., or really Arlington. I don't think we've talked about total integration between the two pieces there as far as the Cascade. Cascade's beautiful, and you can embed videos. It's probably a little bit richer and deeper than what we're doing on that homepage piece. What you start to see the pattern for on the pages that we're building out, how we could add in those cards, is we want to kind of start working towards, wow, like Insights was really cool and it made those cards. Where do those cards live, like for public display? So we want to start to be able to add those. Business Analyst does some really cool infographics, and then they do reports generated as cards. Cool, what if I want to add some infographics to this thing? Great, I can just send it off and I can add that card. So we're going to continue to add cards, but no plan on like integrating or replacing story maps. But we have done some co-development work, and you'll notice the design was kind of similar to some of the stuff you'll see with Web Ops Dashboard. That was a long answer, sorry.
Do you expect the dashboard functionality or to come live?
Courtney, when do you want to do dashboards? When? No, when do we expect dashboards to go live? It's really just about getting the cards in there. So, I think we're trying to shoot for September-ish. Could be winter at worst. Not too far off. Yes?
So for individual items in your open data portal, how findable are they from web searches like Google? So search engine optimization.
I love you for asking that. So the question was about this data set page that we saw in Open Data. So if we go, see the map story builder. How discoverable is this through organic search, through Google? I'll typically find open data sites. I don't stumble across the pages as much. And one of our architects that rebuilt a lot of the things has been really wanting to tackle SEO on this. So if you do a search for Halifax crimes, Google isn't telling me about oh, here's a newspaper article or blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, here's the data set from the city. So we definitely want to start tackling that. It's not optimal right now. Yes?
Is there a simpler recommended way to once you have the site to embed it into the main page? There's an easy way, obviously, for an app to just embed it. Some practice.
I wouldn't say that there's an easy way to go ahead and embed the actual site over, but what we did see on the older sites, and that what we will put into the newer sites, is that we could actually embed charts and embed maps and embed pieces of it. It is built using a component framework. So we've talked about how can we make these, all of these little things more embeddable. What if you just wanted to take one of those cards and put it over, but kind of not on the immediate radar. Any questions over here? One more, yeah. We get asked that one from time to time, so additional exports for CAD. I don't know. We're kind of waiting on that, because what we started to find out was a lot of the developers that use CAD were just bringing in shape files. So we're like, well, do you need the drawing? I'm like, well, a shape file works. So I don't know, we're trying to figure that one out. It kind of breaks the tenets of open data a little bit when we talked about the machine readable. Anybody can get to it without proprietary software. So, kind of torn on that. But one thing that you can actually do, and this is really cool, is if you still wanted to manage or maintain some of your own exports. So CAD is really important to you and we don't have it yet, and you email me every day and call me names. But we don't have it right. What you can do is you can actually go into this distribution section. You can give a URL to that CAD file, and we can say that it's a type download. And we will, and I can give it a name too, so, and save. And what happens is we will actually harvest this information and we will surface the AutoCAD file that you generate from the download page. It'll show up right where file geodatabase was in that additional section. So you can always customize and put in your own things. Cool. Looks like everybody else is at break. I'll let you guys go, but you kind of look excited. Nobody's sleeping. This is great. Cool. Thanks for coming out. Please don't forget to rate the session.